The Dr. Taz Show, the podcast. Dr. Taz, Superwoman Wellness. Here's Dr. Taz.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to this episode of Superwoman Wellness, where you know I'm determined to bring you back to your superpowered self. Today, we are going to talk just for a few minutes on a topic near and dear to my heart. Hair loss. How many of you are suffering from hair loss? It seems to be an epidemic, honestly. More and more women I meet are struggling with this, and it really, really affects our self-esteem. I know this firsthand because it's honestly my story. I was 20, 28, and started losing hair probably a few years prior to that, but didn't really realize it because I was busy. I was in my head and kind of really honestly not wanting to acknowledge what was happening to me. Has that ever happened to you before, where you know something's going on, but there's a lot of shame and guilt with accepting and owning that something could be shifting or changing? Well, that was me. And so I just kept working, ignored all the signs and symptoms that something was wrong. Hair, after all, is one of our vital signs. And sure enough, it got worse. It got worse to the point where you could kind of see right up here in the crown, there was all this patchiness through here, and you could see in there. And my patients, I was working the emergency room at the time, and my patients, instead of talking and looking at me, right, making eye contact here, were instead staring at my scalp. And I just became more and more self-conscious. I started getting dressed in the dark, hated going out. I was single at the time and then started dating. And it was actually my husband who said something and was like, you know what? I think something's wrong. I think you're beautiful, but I don't think this type of hair loss is normal. You probably should get checked out. And my mom sort of backed him up and off I went making doctor's appointments. But that journey didn't turn out so well. So I went to probably 4 to 5 different specialists. And as you guys all know, doctor's appointments take time. So each one was an investment, a chunk of time, a chunk of energy. And I walked out with little to no answers or just this feeling of despair, especially when one particular renowned dermatologist looked at me and said quite clearly, sweetheart, if you don't do something, you're going to be bald in a couple of years. Well, I don't know about you, but nobody wants to hear that at the ripe old age of 28. And I was desperate. He prescribed a medication. I took the medication. It had consequences and side effects, one of which was it dropped your blood pressure pretty significantly, and I ended up crashing my car. So at the end of that little journey, realizing that I could have hurt myself or hurt somebody else on the road, I realized I had to take this into my own hands. And that's really what began my journey into integrative, holistic, and functional medicine. I hate telling this story sometimes because I'm like, oh my God, it was all about my hair. But my hair was my warning sign. It was one of my vital signs. It was a sign of my chi, as they talk about in Chinese medicine, that was declining due to a number of different factors, many of which play into what my patients are experiencing today with their loss of hair and losing hair and not feeling good about themselves. So I wanted to tackle this topic and break it down for you guys. I don't know if many of you understand how complex hair loss is. First of all, there are many different types. There is the type where we just lose from everywhere. There's the type that's very distinct. You lose in a very small circle, and that's alopecia. There is stress hair loss, where it's just falling out because there was a stressful event. There's traction alopecia, where we're, kind of pulling on it all the time, where it's getting styled a lot or teased a lot, and that's making it fall out. But again, there are all these different types of hair loss. So the first step, whenever we're talking about hair loss, is to try to figure out what type you have. And so again, if you're losing from everywhere, that's generalized hair loss, that's diffuse hair loss. If you're losing typically from the crown, that's called androgenetic alopecia, and it's very much tied to the androgens, which are testosterone and DHEA and some of these hormones. If your hair is getting brittle and drier, that could be partly hormonal, but it's also related to nutrition and nutritional deficiencies, like not having enough B vitamins, magnesium, or healthy fats. And then again, if you've recently had a baby, you can have a massive loss of hair, or if you've had a disease, you can have a big loss of hair. Even a stressful event can trigger that. And that's a different type of hair loss called telogen effluvium. So you want to identify the type of hair loss you're experiencing And once you have your finger on that, it's really important to get and acknowledge the fact that you need help and that you need an expert who can help you navigate all of this. So here's what I like to do when someone comes to me talking about their hair and concerned about their hair. We absolutely want to check all the key markers of health. So where's your nutrition? What's happening there? Do you have any of those deficiencies that we just mentioned? If you guys want a cheat sheet, here's my cheat sheet. So being low in magnesium, being low in iron, low in vitamin D, low in fats, those are all some of the common nutritional deficiencies. Low protein. All of these will contribute to hair loss, especially the type of hair loss where the hair gets really brittle, it thins down, and then in turn it falls out. So think nutritional deficiencies and maybe getting tested for some of this stuff if you are experiencing hair loss. In addition to that, we know the hormones play a tremendous role, right, in hair and hair regrowth and hair loss. Thyroid hair loss is hair that literally I can pull out and it just kind of comes out in my hands. That's one type of hair loss. So understanding what your thyroid hormone is doing is so important in getting kind of this overall picture of your thyroid health. After the thyroid, I would say these androgens, we mentioned that. So where is testosterone? Where's DHEA? Where are, some of the other androgens, where are they kind of settling out? I think it's important to understand that as well. That type of hair loss, every strand of hair will start to thin and get kind of really brittle and then just fall out. It's almost like the hair follicle miniaturizes. It starts big and gets smaller and smaller and smaller and then just falls out. So getting those androgen levels checked and making sure they're not too high, that's another way of understanding what type of hair loss you might be experiencing. And after understanding the hormones, gut health, how many times have we talked about gut health? The gut is so critical in this overall picture of health. We want to make sure you're digesting well, you're absorbing all those nutrients properly, and you don't have things like candida, which is an overgrowth of yeast in the gut, or bacterial overgrowth, which in turn can trigger a lot of the inflammatory changes as well. So your gut health, eating the right foods for you, how you're digesting, how you're absorbing, all of these play into the quality of your hair, believe it or not. So we've talked nutrition, we've talked hormones, we've talked about all the different types of hormones to get tested. Stress is a big piece of this puzzle. I was pretty stressed during those years as well, not sleeping, flip-flopping between day and night shift. And so really understanding what your stress load is and how you can modify it would be very important. A big component of that is getting good, consistent sleep, at least 5 to 6. That's what I'm calling consistent sleep. Maybe not 5 to 6 hours, at least 6 to 7 hours continuously at night. 8 is ideal. But I know for a lot of you superwomen, you're out there busting it. So at least 6 to 7 hours of continuous sleep at night. And a Chinese medicine theory is that sleep really needs to be from at least 11 o'clock, in the evening all the way to 5 o'clock in the morning. So getting that good, consistent pattern of sleep. So keeping that in mind as well when you're thinking about your hair and hair loss. So hormones, nutrition, gut health, stress, what you're putting on this lovely scalp, making sure you're not overloading it with chemicals because that in turn can wear down hair quality and plug up the follicles. So that's important as well, and paying attention to scalp health, which actually the scalp, believe it or not, has its own microbiome. In fact, we're talking more and more about the scalp microbiome and how all the bacteria that live here will influence the quality of your hair. But that in turn is tied right back to the gut. So we end up kind of right back where we started. So these are all the critical things to check and evaluate when it comes to your hair and to understanding hair loss and what could be triggering it. It is an epidemic amongst women today. It is something that so many women talk about and really struggle with. I think it's important to have a comprehensive plan, understand where all these markers are, and then really work with someone to help you kind of put the pieces of your hair together. And remember, hair loss is also connected to other autoimmune and inflammatory disorders like PCOS, even rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis, and so much more. So again, hair, don't assume that just putting something on the scalp will take care of everything. You really want a comprehensive plan to help bring your hair back to its glory and take good care of it in the years to come. I hope this is helpful. We can continue to talk about this or any other topic that is keeping you from feeling less than superpowered. So much of how we feel is tied in things like our hair and skin and weight. And while it may seem vain, at the end of the day, how we feel will dictate what we bring into our lives. I hope this has been helpful information. I'll be doing more of these short little bursts on different topics. Let me know what you'd like me to talk about. And for those of you who have been watching this, thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to rate and review it and share it with your friends. I will see you guys next time.